breaking down the skills of the GOAT, Alexander Volkanovski. Starting things off with the In and Out Feint. This is possibly the most easy feint that there is. It's like a footwork feint in which you step in, making him think you're going to attack, and drawing out some kind of reaction. It's made to look like the beginning of stepping in for an attack, and a lot of times it'll draw out a reaction that sets up a real attack. Next, we've got the fake uppercut. This is one of my favorite feints. Not only because it is so effective, but because that uppercut has such a clearly identifiable path that you're very likely to get a reaction from the opponent. When you use something like a feint jab, it is sometimes kind of hard for the opponent to see because the human eye has problems registering things that are coming straight at it. But with this fake uppercut, you give the eye something to really look at. And because that uppercut has such a path that is easy to see, it's very likely you're going to draw something out. Probably my second favorite feint are these fake rear kicks here. This is where you kind of pop the rear leg and hip forward as if you're going to throw a teep or a roundhouse kick, but you leave the foot planted on the ground. Very easy feint to do and very likely to draw out a reaction. I have a video on Izzy doing this a lot. If you want to check that out, I'll put a link somewhere in the description. Taking a look at another great feint next. This is the fake lead kick. And this is super common in Muay Thai. What you're going to do is just lift the leg up, the lead leg, bend the knee and lift it, making it look like you're throwing a teep kick. And it's, like I said, extremely common in Muay Thai and very likely to draw out reactions. A great way to get into your opponent. And when they draw out reactions, if you're moving forward with it, it's a great time to land a follow-up shot. We've got the level change feint next, and this might be the best feint in the sport, the one that is the most effective, because everyone's always looking out for that takedown. Any kind of level change that makes it look like you're going in for that takedown, as you're seeing here, is very likely to draw out a reaction from your opponent, especially moving back. No one wants to get taken down in MMA. You get held down, you get beat up, it's awful. So there are hyper reactions to when you use that level change feint, faking like you're going for the takedown. Now, let's wrap up feints by looking at some sequences of feints. The only other person I've seen do this is Israel Adesanya, where they fake like a bazillion times before they actually move in. Now, typically, you're gonna see fighters throw feints once in a while. Typically, like a fake jab to double leg is common, some kind of variation of the feint jab. But, you know, a round or two goes by and they forget about it and now there's no more feints. With these guys, Volk and Izzy in particular, they are throwing more feints than they're actually throwing strikes. And it makes sense. You know, you're never more vulnerable than when you're going to strike. If he hits you as you're moving in, as you're stepping in for a big strike, oof, that's the epitome of using the opponent's force against him. It is as if two trains just smash together, and one of those trains is your face, and the other train is his fist. Now, like I said, this is theoretically brilliant. Tons of feints, constantly keeping the opponent guessing. And if you can actually master this, having feints fully integrated into your movement patterns, then you will truly reap the benefits. However, it's kind of hard. It is difficult to learn how to do this. That's why not a lot of people do it. One of the things that makes it difficult is you really have to have a mastery of distance management. Lead arm and grabs your lead wrist. Watch this here. Reaches forward, and he's actually going to grip onto that wrist. Now, this is a move you're never gonna find in boxing or Muay Thai because of that glove, right? But in MMA, grabbing that wrist is a complete option that you have. Theoretically, it could be used for all kinds of things. It stuffs the opponent's jab. He can't really jab you if you're holding his hand. If you want to grapple with your opponent, this could be like the first way that you get control of them. You get that wrist control. That wrist control game is still there even though we're in a striking stance. What's so great about this grabbing hand is that you can feint with it. After you've grabbed it a couple times, you can feint with that, draw out a reaction, and then come over the top with something like you're seeing here, this overhand. And at the very least, even if you don't come over the top with a big shot, reaching to grab that hand is just a great way to keep that lead arm occupied. You know, you shut down the jab, you could engage the wrestling if you wanted to, and oftentimes the guy's just gonna move back to avoid getting his hand grabbed. Now, I am a big believer in this grabbing hand technique, so let's explore a little bit more of it, shall we? This is grabbing hand to a jab, which will work either off of a fake grab, you move the arm out of position via the feint, or with a real grab. Notice here, grabs the jab, he goes to defend, Volkanovski lets go, opening up a clear path for that jab right there. Now, I think it's important to know that this grabbing hand technique to the jab, beautiful, is something that you're not going to see in Muay Thai or boxing because of the gloves. While MMA was greatly inspired by these two sports, it's important to realize there are elements in the striking that are going to be different. One of them being able to actually grab that lead hand. Not a lot of people do it because I think a lot of people are involved, are really thinking primarily in boxing or Muay Thai, but this is MMA. It's a little bit different here. Grabbing that hand can set up all kinds of things, whether it be more strikes or setting up your grappling. Now, we're going to talk more about Volkanovski's grabbing hand, but first we've got to talk about his stepping strikes. This is where the rear leg steps up as you strike. This has grown tremendously in popularity as the sport has grown, and for good reason. It's a great technique. Not only does using the power of that run really generate a lot of power, you're just blitzing at the opponent, but it constantly changes which side is going to be the power side. You know, if he's orthodox, you typically have to watch out for the right side. But if he's switching in the middle of a combination, that power side is switching. And now you don't know which side is the real damaging side that you have to watch out for. So these stepping strikes, when used right, are a tremendous, powerful, and confusing tool for the opponent. Now we've covered that, we can look at grabbing hand to stepping strike. This is one of the most impressive things I see Volkanovski do. He grabs the hand, now he's going to step in with the rear leg as he throws a strike. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Grabs, watches that rear leg steps up as he throws his big strike here. Knocked Islam around there. Grabs, steps in as he strikes. I mean, it's really kind of brilliant when you think about it. They can't move back because you're holding their arm. They can't step away. You've shut down the jab that they would use to defend against it. And you can kind of like pull yourself in. You pull on that arm as you step forward, and you can generate a lot of power while nullifying a lot of defense this way. Definitely one of the big things I took away from making this breakdown was all the things you can do with this grabbing hand. Now, one of the things that Volk might do better than anybody else is he knows how to break your stance with a low kick. He can kick it and knock you right off your base, knock you down, do all kinds of things. Now, let's talk about the theory of stance, right? Stance is like the most foundational concept in all of martial arts. It's where all your attacks are going to come from. It's where you're pretty reasonably defended. You're balanced. You have access to all your moves. And what happens is if you're not in your stance, you're basically not ready to fight. Stance, when you get into it, it's like engaging fight mode. It is the balance point from which everything will stem from. If you are knocked out of it, not only are you not in position to go for an attack yourself, but you are undefended while you're out of that stance. It's like you've been knocked off balance and now you're vulnerable. So really, whenever you throw a low kick, not only is damage the goal, but if you can knock him out of his stance, that is a huge, huge benefit. And Volkanovski is as good at it as I've ever seen anybody be. He stops attacks coming in. He can set up his own attacks off of it. He is a master of breaking your stance with that low kick. And not only is Volkanovski good with that stance breaking low kick, he's got a killer lead body kick. And I think this move is one of the most underrated techniques in MMA. That lead kick is so easy to throw. It's difficult to catch because it's quick. Volkanovski typically does it by sliding that rear leg up to the lead leg and then lifting that lead leg to throw the kick. And Volkanovski, I guarantee, can kick like a horse. And I say it's hard to grab because it is a little harder than a rear one. But even when people go to grab it, Volkanovski is fantastic at takedown or punishment off of that kick. Here is something that is theoretically brilliant, but you don't see a lot of times, is ending your combination with the jab. Here we're going to see him start off with the cross. Max is able to get out of the way of that, and here he comes in, smashing him with that left jab there. We see another example coming up is going to be an overhand. Throws that overhand. Zombie's able to get out of the way. Cracks him with this jab right afterwards. So why is this theoretically brilliant, like I said? In combination, the easiest thing to hit them with is going to be that jab, right? So if you're fighting a guy who's defending by moving backwards, really one of the best things that you have to chase him with is that jab. People often do not expect a jab to be the end of a combination, thus making it all the more effective. Volkanovski is a guy that switches his stance often. And it's really funny, when I was coming up in the fight game, people fought in one stance. You were either a southpaw or you were orthodox. And people would rarely switch their stance or switch up which leg was in the front. You see that being done today, even at the highest of levels. I mean, Conor McGregor was pretty much exclusively a southpaw. Same with Anderson Silva. George St. Pierre, exclusively orthodox. But nowadays, especially in the lighter weight classes, and Israel Adesanya does it all the time, we're seeing a ton of stance switching. And it makes sense. Theoretically, it doubles everything. You have twice as many angles you can come from now. You can switch back and forth and see which one he's vulnerable to. It makes all the sense in the world to be switching stances, and it's so good to see someone implement switching back and forth, making reads from each at the highest of levels. And there's one really interesting way in which he switches his stance, in that he steps forward. Basically, just like that stepping strike that we did before, Volkanovski steps forward with the rear leg, which could be a feint in itself. It closes distance, and it switches the stance. Here we're going to see it. Right leg steps forward. No strike attached to it, just bringing the rear leg up to the front. A lot of utility to this technique. 1, looks like it could be a kick. 2, switches the stance. 3, closes the distance. If you can manage the distance properly and not get hit while doing it, tremendously effective. It also works moving backwards as well. Notice Volkanovski's going to step the lead leg back and again, which switches his stance. It can be a great way of backing up. Not only does it move you back, but you switch at the end of the step. So notice, brings the left leg back, southpaw, switches again back to orthodox. That sudden change of stance while moving back could open up a big counter strike. So I encourage game that much more depth. We're looking at a rare fighter. First of all, Volkanovski, the champ. Fantastic striking, elite striking. He's always hanging out with the likes of Israel Adesanya and Dan Hooker. He's always mixing it up at Tiger Muay Thai. If you YouTube that right now, you can actually see videos of him sparring with Peter Yan. So this guy's striking is elite for a couple reasons. 1, he is a guy that just puts tremendous pressure on you. Once he smells blood, once he really starts putting the pressure on, it's hard to get him off, and there's very few in the history of the game that can put this kind of elite pressure on you when it comes to the striking. He's fantastic at getting in and out. He simultaneously puts pressure and slips back right out of the way right when you think you're about to hit him. So let's watch this clip here and you'll see what I mean. Volkanovski's gonna start putting on the pressure here. Starts walking his man down, lead roundhouse kick to the body, front snap kick. Now Alex may be moving forward, but he recognizes the time to retreat. Watch how he moves just out of the way of this counterattack. Let's see that one again here. Out of the way. Out of the way. Beautiful. And now without even missing a beat, we're gonna put the pressure back on. And let's watch again how Volkanovski gets in and out with that striking. Putting the pressure on, knows when to take it off. Did you see that last move right there? Let's watch that again. Comes in with a jab and a rear hook. Backs up right in time for that uppercut. So this combination of elite pressure and elite distance management means that most of your mental processing should probably be spent watching out for Volkanovski's striking. I'd say it's at a level that only a couple other people have ever gotten to in this game, and I think you get it. It's no joke. But on a side note, his wrestling is freaking great. It is elite as well, and often he'll set up his wrestling, create opportunities to shoot, and what he'll do is he'll kind of draw you into a firefight. So watch that right leg here. We're going to see Volkanovski start this off with a big kick. He's going to make his opponent think he's in a firefight, and his opponent's going to try to wing a bomb of a left hook. When that happens, Volkanovski's going to duck under and engage his wrestling to really get a nice takedown here. Look at how deep Volkanovski is on the legs, and look at how straight his posture is. This guy's going right over. Another example of drawing in the firefight. Watch, Volkanovski's gonna wing two bombs at his opponent here. 1, 2. As a counter shot, his opponent's gonna throw this right uppercut. Volkanovski's got his opponent really thinking he's in a dogfight now, and when his opponent goes to throw a jab, Volkanovski's gonna duck underneath, and he's going to shoot for those legs that are now wide open, and he's going to get in deep on this shot. You can actually see this guy threw a cross afterwards, and that allowed Volkanovski to get even deeper. Beautiful takedown. That was set up by initiating a firefight. Here we see it again. Volkanovski really throwing down, initiating a firefight. Watch as his opponent reacts. He goes to throw a strike, but that gives Volkanovski what he needs in order to get in deep on a double leg. Look at this posture here. That straight up and down, he's going to be able to lift this guy right up. And look at that clasp of the hands. You really get to clasp your hands around a guy's legs, just like Volkanovski did right there. Unbelievable. Now, right away, as the man starts to stand back up, we see Volkanovski enter the back control. Notice he has his chest right over the top of his opponent's thoracic spine. That means he's carrying all the weight of Volkanovski right now. And as he tries to power back up, notice this. Volkanovski's going to pin his wrist to the cage. That is going to demobilize that hand. That would be the hand you would need for an underhook to protect your legs from a big takedown from Volkanovski. And Volkanovski's going to use that. But first he's going to pop him in the head one time to get this guy to go and block up high for the strikes. And then he's going to duck underneath on a dirty double in deep. This guy tries to hit the switch, but Volkanovski's posture and the depth of that shot is not going to allow that. He's going to lift his man up and slam down for the takedown here. Beautiful wrestling chain by Volkanovski. Now, Volkanovski's got some of the best ground and pound in the sport, and I don't think a lot of people give him credit for this, especially when he starts to posture up or get people on his side. Let's take a look at posturing up first. Notice, one knee is up. The goal here is to get on that other foot so he's standing completely over his opponent, Brian Ortega here. Boom, he's up to the second foot. He's completely over the top of Brian Ortega, and it's hard to see the legs, but his hips are in such a position that he's stuffed Brian Ortega's ability to upkick. That is the bottom man's biggest weapon from this position, and without it, he's gonna get freaking Donkey Kong'd on. Just brutal ground and pound from the champ here, reminiscent of Khabib. I think it's that good. He's here, he sticks to you like glue. Watch as Brian Ortega tries to kick away. Notice right away, Volkanovski's going to step back in, and that's going to limit the upkick and the hip mobility of Brian Ortega. Look, he's got his hip right over the top and jammed up Ortega's hip. Now pay attention to the right leg of Volkanovski. He's going to step in and severely compromise the mobility of Ortega's left hip, and the beatings continue. This was vicious too. I mean, I'm surprised Ortega survived this. This is bad. And he can go all day with the cardio, Volkanovski. Volkanovski also does really well with a position where he forces you to be turned in towards him. This exposes the temple, and he's going to crush your temple. Here, he's using this underhook to keep his man forced, turned in towards him. And with that, he's going to start bashing on the guy's temple. The time he really gives up that underhook are A, when the guy enters the fetal position, as you can see here. He doesn't really need it so much if he's in the fetal position. And the second is when the guy posts. Whenever the man does that, he's going to throw a bomb of a right hand that was the underhook over right onto the guy's temple. Posting like that opens up the shot. And afterwards, he's always going to return it right to that underhook. Watch all that play out again here. Watch. His man is going to post with that left hand. And what he does, Volkanovski's going to slang a bomb of a right hand. That bomb of a right hand actually put this guy in the fetal position, which really is going to expose that temple, and Volkanovski is going to make him pay accordingly. Now the beating can start to get real bad when Volk starts to posture up. It's important to remember that on the ground, distance is power. Notice he's got one leg up here, and that's creating a lot of distance between him and his opponent. Ground and pound is all about how much distance you can make your punch move through. And the more postured up you are, the better. And that's especially true if you can do that with your opponent turned in like that. If you can posture and blast him, one, turned in, he doesn't have that up kick anymore. And two, that temple is exposed, and that temple is a money shot. Take a look at him starting square and then forcing his opponent to turn in. Look at this left hand here. What he's going to do is he's going to grip, a good strong grip on the guy's tricep, and use that to pull it in. See how he's gripping here? He's really cupping around the tricep. That is going to hold the man facing him, and that's going to allow him to beat on his head. And here we see Volkanovski start to posture up. And he's able to do this because this guy has his hand threaded in between Volkanovski's leg. That was a bad decision. And speaking of jiu-jitsu gone wrong, watch this. Volkanovski starts pounding on his opponent here. And he's starting to force him over to the side. And when he goes to the side, this guy's going to go for a leg lock. Works great in jiu-jitsu. It's a little different here. Not that it won't work. But this is where Volkanovski's going to start pounding on that temple area while this guy's going for a leg lock. Pretty big shots as well. I was thinking about it. One of the reasons Volkanovski's ground and pound is probably so good is because he's got elite striking. He's dead accurate, knows how to generate that power, and his wrestling is there to put him in a position to do so.